Hello, Philip Hinkle with Event DV Magazine. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you some of the tools within EDIUS to make you more creative and more efficient. This will help you be more productive on your timeline and get your projects done quicker. I hope you learn a lot. Enjoy the tutorial. Welcome back, everyone. In today's tutorial, we're going to talk about being creative with custom presets and nested sequences. We have a lot of stuff to cover, so let's get rolling. First thing I'm going to do is I want to come over to my effects palette and I'm going to actually create a folder to put all my new presets in that we're going to create. To do so, I'm just going to come up to my root and I'm going to do create new folder, and I'm going to call it my bag of tricks. Okay, now I want to move it up, but I can't move it up right now because this lock is turned on. If you try and move any of these folders around, it won't let you. It's because you've got the lock turned on. Once I turn that off and open it up, I can move this up. I'm going to stick it right up at the top of my effects palette. This will give me the opportunity to put all my new presets and stuff right in here in my bag of tricks. They'll always be at the top of my effects and easy to get to when I need them. The whole idea of creating a custom preset is something that you do on a repetitive, common basis so you can easily get to it all the time. And this would be a great way to keep them organized. The first custom preset I want to create with you today is a look similar to the bleach bypass. I like to use the bleach bypass look a lot of times when I'm doing a flashback to an earlier point in time or even to an earlier point in a day where someone is remembering something that happened to them earlier in the day or in their lives. It's sort of a washed out, desaturated, and very contrasty look. I use it on a regular basis and it really looks pretty good as a flashback. So let's get started building the preset. First thing I'm going to do is going to come over to my effects palette and I'm going to go down to my color correction filters and select the color balance. I'm just going to drop that on my clip. I'm going to open up the properties either by double clicking on the color balance or using the open setup dialog. I'll double click on it. And all I'm really going to do with this filter is just turn the saturation down. -40 looks like a good amount. As you can see, our image over here on the left has gotten a little bit less saturated. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select a YUV curve and drop that on my clip. I'm going to open up my properties for it. I'm going to put a little bit of an S curve on there just to enhance my whites and crush the blacks just a little bit. That looks pretty good right there. I'm going to click OK for that one. The next thing I'm going to do, believe it or not, we're going to use the soft focus filter in a way you probably haven't thought to use it before. I'm going to take my soft focus, here it is, I'm going to drop it on my clip. I'm going to open up my properties. I'm going to set my radius, we're going to leave that one at 20. I'm going to leave my radius at 20. I'm going to take the blur and I'm going to turn that down to about 14. I don't want that really blurry look, so I'm going to crank that down just a little bit. And I'm going to set the brightness down a little bit so it's not quite so washed out to about, I'm going to set that at about 7. Okay, I'm going to click OK. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come and I'm going to grab the three-way, it's in my color correction, I'm going to grab the three-way color corrector. I'm going to drop that on my clip. Going to open it up, and this time on my blacks I'm going to drop my saturation way down and my contrast way down, as well as the same process on the whites. I'm going to come down and click OK, and as you can see we've got a somewhat washed out and contrasty look. It's very similar to a bleach bypass look. If we want to see what it looked like before, we can highlight all of our filters and click on one of the check boxes. As you can see, it was very saturated and colorful, and now it's very washed out and contrasty. That's pretty much the look that I wanted. So now all we need to do to create a preset out of that is if we make sure all of these are selected, in case we had unselected one, let's select them all again, and then I right click. I'm going to come down and do a Save as Current User Preset. When I do, and I come back over to my effects palette, it's now added into my effects palette, but it's in my color correction set of filters. I don't really want it there. You can see it's got a U on it. That means it's my user preset. That's a real easy way to know that that's the one you just did. I'm just going to drag my scroll bar up. I'm going to take my new filter and I'm going to drag it up into the bag of tricks. Now, if I want to come down here and click on the name, I can change the name to something significant. I'm going to call it Bleach Bypass. Okay, I have one filter in my bag of tricks. Let's move on to another one. This is kind of a neat little trick that I learned recently. I've got a clip here of this older gentleman, and I'm going to use some filters in EDIUS that are going to take his skin, clean up some of the blemishes, and make it less aged look. I'm going to take 10 years off of this guy's look. To do it, it's a very, very simple process, and it's something in your HD footage that once you've created this user preset, you can just drop it on a clip very easily and make it work. To do this filter, I'm going to come up to my video filters, and I'm going to find one called chrominance. The thing most people use the chrominance filter for is to do like a color pass, like have all yellow flowers and everything else in the scene black and white. We're going to use some of that same principle, but we're just going to use it to affect the look of his skin. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Show Key. So everything in white is what I'm working with, and obviously his skin is not selected, his coat is. So I'm going to double click on his skin until I get it. Oh, that looks pretty good. It's sort of dialed in. I'm going to come over to my color luminance area, dial the base down a little bit, dial my range down to where I'm just dealing with mostly his skin. That's looking pretty good right there. I think I'll keep it. We'll unclick the Show key. Now, we need to take something that's going to act on that skin. Remember, the skin was selected, so we need to come back to our effect, and we need to use something on the inside filter. I'm going to select the Smooth Blur. So I'm going to scroll down and find my Smooth Blur. There it is. And open up the setup dialog for it. And I'm going to dial that up to about, a 10 looks pretty good. As you can see, his skin got much softer. I'm going to click OK. And as you can see, we're playing this back in real time. And I hit the play bar, and as you can see, we're playing back in real time. We haven't had to render this effect whatsoever. As you can see, his skin looks much smoother and much cleaner. And if we were to turn this filter on and off, you can see the difference in how smooth his skin looks. Nothing else has been affected. Everything else is still nice, crisp HD, except where the depth of field has obviously messed it up. But you can see his hair's still crisp and all the strands are sticking out. Just his face has gotten much softer and smoother. Okay, so now we've got this set up. We need to save it. So again, I take my filter. There's only one this time. And I'm going to right click and do Save as Current User Preset once again. Now if I come back to my effects palette, I now have this preset all created and set up in my effects palette. Only problem is it's still in my video filters palette, and I need it in my bag of tricks. So again, I'm going to scroll back up into my folders. I'm going to drag my filter up to the bag of tricks. Going to click on it and change the name. I'm going to call this Smooth Skin. Okay, I now have two filters in my bag of tricks. Now, on the Smooth Skin filter, you're going to say, oh, but not everybody's skin is the same color. Complexion's different. Colors vary. So all you need to do on the next time you use it is drop it on your clip and then open the properties up and just reselect the skin of their face by using that Show key function that I showed you earlier. Once that's done, you click OK. You've already got your smoothness dialed in. You've already got all the other background work done. You can do it literally in the matter of seconds. I have one more filter preset I would like to show you today. I'm going to call it my Color Pop. I use this on almost every clip that I use, and I use a nested sequence, which we're going to get into in a little bit, to make it very easy and efficient to make all the colors in my project just pop a little bit more and fatten them up and make them richer. It's very simple. All we're going to do is come up to our video filters. I've got a clip here in another sequence called Color Pop. And believe it or not, again, we're going to use a filter in a way you didn't think to use it. That's the creative part of EDIUS. I'm going to take the old movie filter. Yes, I know that a lot of people think the old movie filter is kind of old-fashioned. Well, I'm not going to use it the way it was designed. I'm going to use some of its abilities to trick it to do what I want. I'm going to open up the old movie filter, and I'm going to turn off every option in here except border darkening. Watch my footage over here on the left. See how it gets this dark border, sort of almost a film-like vignette around it? And it also makes my colors get a lot richer. Look at the difference in the colors. Everything just seems to pop a little bit. I'm actually going to dial that down a little bit so it's not quite as heavy. 51 looks pretty good. Then I'm going to click OK, and again I'm going to take and save it as a user preset. Come back over to my effects palette. There's my old movie. I'm going to move it up to my bag of tricks. And once again, we're going to call it Color Pop. Now, I'm not going to show you anything else on that, but we're going to come back and use that later on to really fix up our entire project when we're completely done at the end of this tutorial. I just wanted to show you that one because it's a real handy little feature that uses the old movie filter in a way that a lot of people don't think to try and use it. Okay, next I want to show you how to create a few transition presets. EDIUS 6 for the first time allowed you to create presets out of your transitions that could have defined length to them. In previous versions of EDIUS, you could save a transition as a preset, but you couldn't save a defined length to it. You always had to go with the default length. Now we can do that, so we can use it more to our advantage. Let me show you a few transition presets. First thing I'm going to do is select my sequence that has some cuts in it and some clips, and I'm going to make a transition. First thing I'm going to do is highlight my transitions. You can see my default is the dissolve. If you right-click in your effects window and go down to duration, you can set your transition in crossfade default length. Right now it's set to a duration of 1 second. A 1 second duration is favorable for certain types of creative work to give it a sense of time as you're taking someone back or forward in time because you're using a long dissolve. For our example, we're going to take and drop our 1 second dissolve right here on the first cut in our timeline. And then I'm going to zoom in on my timeline. The quick way I like to use is the control and mouse wheel, and it will zoom in real easy. If we look right here, you'll see there's a little green line. That's our actual cut point between our two clips. I like to create about a 10 frame dissolve that gives my cuts, my straight cuts in my project, a much softer feel to them where they're not quite as harsh, but they're not like this really long transition that would give the viewer a different sense of changing in time. It just softens a hard cut up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my cursor right on top of that green line, which is my cut point, and I'm going to go back 5 frames by using my arrow keys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to take the edge of that transition and I'm going to drag it over until it butts up against my timeline cursor. I'm going to take it back to my original cut point and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more frames over. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. I now have a 10 frame dissolve, and as you can see, it's very quick. It's almost unnoticeable, but it just softens up a harsh cut. Now what I'm going to do is come over to my information palette, and you can see I've got a dissolve there. I could open it up and edit the traits of it. I'm going to leave it just like it is. But if I right click on it and do save as current user preset and then come back over to my effects palette, you can see my dissolve is down here, and you can see it's got 10 frames out there on the description. Again, I need this in my bag of tricks, so I'm going to drag it up to my bag of tricks, and I'm going to hit F2 to rename it. And I'm going to call it Dissolve 10. That's my way of knowing I have a 10 frame dissolve. The next transition preset I want to make is one I learned how to create on the Grass Valley forums. Another user posted this concept. It was pretty cool, and it's basically just a simple white flash that ramps up and down real fast. One way we could do it is we could come over to our bin and go to our root directory where I'm going to grab just a white color mat and drop it on my timeline. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see it. I'm just going to drag that down to 1 frame. Then if I play through that, you'll see it's a real fast but very harsh white flash. Probably not a real desirable result unless you're looking for a strobe effect. So I'm going to come back over to my effects palette. I'm going to go down to my alpha option. In my transitions, there's only one there, so I'm going to drop it on my clip. Again, it's a 1 second because that's my duration that was preset, and it's too long. So I'm going to take and put my cursor back right in the middle. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I want to make this one only 6 frames long, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I'm going to drag my edge back to here. I'm going to come back to the center. 1, 2, 3, the other way. I'm going to drag this over. Now we need to open up the properties of this one. So we're going to go to our information, make sure our transition is highlighted. There it is. Double click on it, and I'm going to drag my sharpness all the way to -99. I'm going to drag the acceleration to 100, and for colored edges I'm going to set white. Click OK, and we're all done with that. I'm going to zoom out a little bit on my timeline and watch what it looks like when this plays through. And once again, I'm probably going to use this filter multiple times, so I'm going to take and right click on it, save as current user preset. If I come back to my effects palette, you can see there is my custom preset. I'm going to go add it to my bag of tricks and name it White Flash. We're building up a pretty nice little arsenal in our bag of tricks, aren't we? Now that I've shown you a little bit about filter presets and transition presets, I want to show you a few basic ways that you can use sequences and nested sequences to make your workflow better and to boost your creativity a little as well. First thing you'll notice is I've got a number of sequences along my timeline down here. If we come over and we look at our Nest 2 sequence, you'll see I've got 3 title tracks, and each one is a circle within a circle within a circle. And if we were to look at the information on one of those clips, we can see that our layouter has been keyframed to give some motion to those circles. Each layer has been coordinated to make the circles rotate evenly. Now how this can be used is this sequence called Nest 2 can actually become a clip within another sequence. If we look in our bin, we will see we have a Nest 2 and we've got all these other sequences here that you also see here along the top of my timeline. If I go to my key effect sequence right here, you can see right here is my Nest 2 sequence, and I've got a sequence 1. If we look at sequence 1, we can see this is a 8-camera multicam edit of our drummers. So let's go back to our key effect. As you can see in the key effect sequence, I've got my Nest 2 sequence being used. I've got my sequence 1, which is actually an edited multicam sequence of the drums with 8 different cameras. And underneath that is a color mat with a gradient on it. So if I turn on the drummers, you'll see that we've got our 8-camera multicam edit going here. And if we turn on our Nest 2, remember those circles? Well, you can now see them faintly with transparency from the alpha channel on the titles. And we've got a really cool effect that is a nice little intro to a finished product for us. We could put titles on there and do all kind of other creative things with that. And here we've got 2 different sequences that we've made up, nested and creatively used to create a new, completely different look. Now, we'll come back to that in a little bit. The next thing I'd like to do is I'm going to create a new sequence. I'm going to click on my new sequence button. You can see out here we've got another one. I'm going to rename that Final. If this was a project and I was creating a multi-piece project, I would create it for my workflow reasons in multiple sequences and then just drop all of those on the timeline as individual clips. For this particular project, I'm actually going to take that key effect sequence, I'm going to drop it in as its own clip. As you can see, there it is. And it's got all those other sequences within it. If I go and change anything about this nested sequence here, all those changes are going to be reflected in the one that I put on my timeline. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sequence 1, which was my 8-camera multicam edit, and I'm going to drop that on my timeline. That's a fairly long clip. Maybe I don't want that whole thing, so I'll cut it there and delete the rest. Now, if I wanted to come up and take that mask, remember our mask tutorial at the beginning, and put that on the end of my final product, I could put that on there. Now I've got all 3 portions of a small project on my timeline, and it was much easier to manage because I built each section. My intro, my body, and maybe this was an ending. I've used my sequences to more easily manage a project. It's one real easy way to make massive projects flow easier. Now remember, when I created in my bag of tricks the color pop filter, well, here's how I use that at the end of a project. I'll take and I'll just highlight all my clips, simple, easy drag. All my clips are now highlighted, all my sequences, and I just take that color pop and I drop it on, and they all get that. I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to move my timeline cursor to where you'll actually see it happen. I'm going to drag my color pop down and drop it on. And see how the colors all got just a little bit richer? You got that very, 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 very subtle vignette around the edge. If I come down into my clip a little bit more, you can see how the colors are just richer. If I come over to my information palette and undo that old movie filter, which was what the original was, that still shows up that way in your filters, and I undo it, you can see the difference it made in our footage. If I come down here to our mask filter and I do the same thing and we undo it, you can see the difference in the imagery. The colors just seem to pop more. It's a really creative way to use a simple function in a filter that maybe you hadn't thought to do before, and just quickly apply it to everything on your timeline to give all your colors just a little bit more pop and make it look a lot nicer in your project. That wraps up today's tutorial. I hope you enjoyed seeing how to use custom presets and transitions and also nested sequences to boost your creativity. I like to tell people when I'm training them that EDIUS is a playground, and all I'm giving you are little pieces that get you on the merry-go-round or get you on the swing set. There's lots more adventure out there at the playground, and you need to dig into EDIUS and find out how to use all the tools at your disposal, and you can be creative beyond what you thought was possible. Dig in there and create your own presets. Come back next time and check out our tutorial on Robusky Keyer, a new keyer for EDIUS that's just been released that will make your green screens the best ever.